In 1939, J.B. Auden set out to redraw the Himalaya. But what he found wasn't just on the map. Snow, faith, and the thin air between devotion and discovery would test how far a man could go alone.
Hey, glad you're here. Welcome to the Himalayan Journals. Here on this channel, we bring to you real stories from century old field notes. We try to keep it simple and calm here. Think of it as a documented history of the Himalayas from the early 1900s, covering stories of indigenous wisdom, epic expeditions, and groundbreaking science passed on just as they were recorded. Subscribe, zone out, binge.
In January 1939, geologist J.B. Auden left Calcutta by car for a long season's work among the central Himalaya. After years of surveying the lower ranges, new blueprints of the maps finally allowed him to examine the main ranges and connect his work with that of Griesbach from the 1880s. The journey began through the plains, from Delhi to Dehradun and Rishikesh, then north toward Tehri, Dangchura, and Karnaprayag. By early March, he crossed the northern rim of the Dudueto Massif, a pass buried in snow at 9,400 feet. His mules were dismissed, and the luggage had to be relayed by hand across the ridge. From Lansdowne, he moved north through the pilgrimage towns, Devaprayag, Tehri, Nakuri, and finally, Yamunotri. There, at over 12,000 feet, he found snow still lying thick and a world divided between devotion and curiosity. The boiling springs of Yamunotri issued from tufa formations that the local priests compared, with some seriousness, to the anatomy of the human body. Auden bathed in the steaming tank by night. The sand beneath his tent was hot enough to burn through the ground sheet, and a sadhu explained his resulting headache in moral terms. It was punishment for curiosity without devotion. Through April and May, Auden moved north again toward Harsil. He camped at Kot and Barahat, visited the trout hatcheries at Kalyana, and endured heat above 100 degrees in the shade. The potu fly swarmed in the valleys, a torment known since the time of the early forest officers. At Harsil, he dismissed the Lansdowne coolies and took on local men, Juin Singh, Jagru, Moor Singh, Sangya Sian, and Siama, who knew the terrain. They climbed up the Siangad Valley and camped on the Sian Glacier at 14,500 feet. From there, they crossed a 15,900-foot col into the Jalandhar Valley, glissading 3,000 feet down the snow on the northern side. By late May, Auden returned to Harsil, meeting his colleague J.F.S. Otley, fresh from Yat Ganga. They shared a sheep, rum, and local chang by the smoky fire. Soon after, Auden continued alone to Nilang, up the Jat Ganga, working in cold and rain. On June 8th, he reached the Tsangokla at 17,500 feet in a blizzard. The region lay in dispute. Both the Tibetans and the Tehri Garhwal officials claimed the Jat Ganga Valley, each erecting and uprooting boundary pillars in turn. Storms pursued the party eastward through the Chuaraji Valley. A wolf cub, dropped by an eagle, was rescued and carried in a rucksack, fed with clim milk and pemmican, and slept uneasily in Auden's sleeping bag. For days, the men struggled through snow and low visibility, crossing the Sonam Dar at about 19,300 feet with lightning close at hand. They descended into the Chunganmu Valley, reached Nilapani at 12,960 feet, and then turned up the Managad toward the glaciers. Old moraines marked the passage of ancient ice, and the men camped under cold rain. From 18,000 feet on the Mana Glacier, Auden attempted to find a pass toward the Arwa Glacier, but the slopes proved steeper than the map suggested. Time was running short. He turned back down the valley, his wolf cub now strong enough to eat meat, and reached Nelang again to find his porters drunk on Chang. A quarrel over a slapped face nearly became a court case. Leaving the unsettled camp behind, Auden descended to Gangotri, where the cedar forests and the roar of the Bhagirathi River marked his return to familiar ground. In late June, he turned up the Kedar Ganga. Rain, forest, and cliffs slowed the march to 2 miles in 5 hours. Above 11,000 feet, he found wild onions called Pongrir and a clear view of the great peak Fating Pithwara, 22,650 feet high. On June 29th, he crossed a col of 18,000 feet from the Rudagaira Glacier to the Katling Glacier, beyond the main range. The descent was dangerous, the icefall chaotic. Only the skill of Juin Singh, steady on every rock and crevasse, brought the party down safely. They reached the green valley of the Bilangna, fought through thickets to the village of Gangi, and at last descended to the plains. 6 marches of 86 miles brought them to Mussoorie. There, in the comfort of a hill hotel, the mountain bond between the men dissolved. As Auden wrote, "No camp lasts forever." After 6 months and 100 miles across the breadth of the Himalaya, he had linked the plains, the Siwaliks, and the Tibetan frontier. Nothing he had done was beyond the paths of the local Jad shepherds, whose Mani walls still stood beside the rough tracks. They did not write of their journeys, he noted, but lived and died among the harsh slopes that to them were home. He, with his ice axes, maps, and tins of pemmican, could only pass through their world for a season, and then return to his own.